All right, everybody. So thanks for tuning in and good morning or evening or afternoon. Welcome to today's edition of tinyML Talks. So first up, huge thanks to all of our tinyML Talks sponsors. So we have Deeplight, Kickshow, Edge Impulse, Reality AI, Maxim Integrated, and SynSense. So if you're interested in sponsoring the tinyML Talks series, please reach out to betty@tinyml.org for some information. So quick notification of our next tinyML Talks, which are going to be on Tuesday, October 13th. So we have Rajan Bhatt, who's the Director of Engineering for Machine Learning at Kickshow. And we have Chandrasekhar Vupalapati, who's the Senior VP of Products and Programs at Hanamayama Innovations and Technologies Incorporated. So every webcast starts at 8 a.m. Pacific time, same as today. And please reach out to us at talks@tinyml.org if you are interested in presenting. Okay, so our next talk here from Stuart Feffer at Reality AI is building products using tinyML with sensors. And so Stuart Feffer is the co-founder and CEO of Reality AI. And I will let Stuart take it from here.
All right, thank you very much. So yeah, Reality AI is for teams that are building products using tinyML and sensors. And we say building products very specifically. This is intended for use in an R&D group, probably in a larger corporation that is dealing with all of the complexities of the full product development lifecycle. It can be used to generate tinyML models, but that's not all it does. And let's talk about that a little bit. I mean, what is the difference between building a product and doing a machine learning project? Well, there's a lot of differences, and I would sum them all up in two words: certainty and scale. When you're building a product, you need certainty that you understand how this product is going to work, that it's going to work everywhere you need it to work, that you know what it's going to cost, that you can acquire all the components at a known cost, and so on. And scale, because you're dealing with a very sizable number of permutations, of configurations and customers and use cases, and that can also bring with it a very large amount of data that needs to be used either for training or for testing or perhaps for both. So, products have to work for all of my customers everywhere they plan to use them all of the time, and not just for me right here on my lab bench or in my testing facility. Maybe, just as important, they need to be explainable. We need to be able to convince all of the constituencies involved that this thing is going to work and why they should believe. It's not just for the data scientist to interpret. Most importantly, executive management who is going to be making decisions about budget. Everybody needs to be on the same page about how this is going to work. You'll need to be able to source your components through the supply chain at a known cost, meet cost targets both for the bill of materials and for the cost of manufacturing, and deal with all of the other constraints that come along with it. Size, weight, power consumption, heat, corrosivity, whatever it is that's specific to the use case involved. There's a lot of things happening here. So building products isn't just building models. Although, and this is really what I'm going to talk about today, you can use those tinyML models that you build and the insights you gain from those models to inform all of those other issues. And that's what I want to show you today. I'm going to be showing it to you using our software package, Reality AI Tools, which contains modules that support that full product development lifecycle, starting with automated feature exploration and generation of machine learning models. We're certainly not the only ones who will generate a machine learning model from data that's suitable for tinyML deployment. We think we're the best, but there are certainly others that do that. But our approach, grounded as it is in automated feature discovery, gives us other options with respect to explainability and some of these other things which I'm going to show, in particular, BOM optimization. That is, we can use these algorithms to find the most cost-effective combination of components, and in a data-driven way, set the specifications for the components we're going to include in the product. We can manage the masses of data that will be used for training and testing, and then, of course, finally, deploy the Edge AI or tinyML code that we're going to put on our actual device. Okay, now I really wanted to show a live demonstration, but we don't have a whole lot of time. In the next 20 minutes, I'm going to try to take you through an entire product development lifecycle. So I'm going to have to use static screenshots. I apologize. If you would like to see a full demonstration of the tool, get in touch with me after. I'd be very happy to give you a demo. Okay, so full product development lifecycle in the next 20 minutes. Buckle your seatbelts. Here we go. Okay, we're going to do this in the context of a case study. We are an industrial equipment maker, and our main product are these fan-looking things over here. This green thing. It's some kind of industrial blower, and the challenge is we're going to add predictive maintenance capabilities to this product. We want to be able to detect if it's blocked or if there's something else going on. And our first step, phase 1 of this project, is going to prove feasibility. Okay. Cool. The second phase will be to design the actual product, hardware, software, the stack that we're going to actually deploy. And then phase 3, we're going to complete that product development and put it in the hands of manufacturing, marketing, distribution, support, and all those other organizations that need to get involved when you get to that late stage. And we are going to use machine learning at each one of those stages. Okay. So first, phase 1. POC, we're going to prove feasibility. Okay, so for this feasibility test, yeah, we can use 1 or 2 or 3 test units, and we can use one of those dev kits. There are a lot of them, and they're pretty good. So we pick an IoT dev kit that contains an onboard accelerometer. We put it in the most likely place that we think is going to be where the vibrations are going to change the most, just based on our engineering intuition. We collect a relatively small amount of data. I mean, enough data to generate a model, but certainly not enough to build a product. We generate a model, and then we go and show the results to the bosses and see if we can get budget to move on to the next phase. A very typical phase 1 POC, okay? And that's our approach. And for this piece, we use what we call the AI Explore module of Reality AI tools. AI Explore is the piece that takes a data set collected in a situation like we just described, the output from that accelerometer on that IoT board, loads it into the tool, and runs an exploration of that data to generate a list of options for the best possible set of features, and that can discriminate between our classes, and then automatically generates a model and tunes it to that feature set. And then finally, visualizations for explainability. So we've loaded all that data in, we've run our Explore, and I'm going to show you a screenshot of the results you get out of that Explore. Okay, so this is a typical result window in Reality AI tools. Each one of these rows is a candidate model. Those models have different levels of complexity. The simplest one is the one with the less green in it. The one with most green in it has the most computational complexity. And yeah, they're all doing pretty well, because guess what? We picked an easy problem for the demo. We all do that. Trade secret. Okay. Now, if I hover over on this complexity icon, I would get a quick shot view of what the resources this model will consume when it's deployed. How many multiply operations it will take to evaluate the feature space and the classification, the RAM requirements, the flash requirements, and so on. We can look at the accuracy, the predicted accuracy, I should say, of each of these models and its resource consumption, and decide if perhaps a trade-off of a point or 2 of accuracy is worth using fewer resources. It's an engineering choice. The other thing we can do is we can use this explanation column over here. If we hover on the explanation column, the first thing we see is a listing of the feature spaces selected for this particular problem. And in this problem, it's using spectral magnitude, a basic FFT output on all 4 channels, and to make the distinction between the classes. Okay. So we click on explanation, and we get our first visualization. Okay, we are seeing here the signature of the fan blocked class, which is one of the 4 or 5 classes that was used for this particular model. And what is this thing telling you? Okay, the horizontal axis is frequency, of course. On the top half, the vertical axis is a measure of the spectral magnitude. It's a computation based on an FFT. And the bottom piece here is the reality AI evaluation of the decision significance. That is using what we know about the mathematics of the feature space, plus what we know about the mathematics of the classification learning algorithm itself. We look at the contribution of each one of these elements of the feature space to making the decision. So what does this tell us? What this tells us very clearly is that most of the time, pretty much all the time, there is a resonance peak at about 55 hertz. And when the fan is blocked, that peak disappears. Right? It's present when all other classes are there, and it disappears when the fan is blocked. Okay, very easy to understand this in engineering terms. This is, of course, a very simple signature. Like I said, we picked an easy problem for the demonstration. Most other signatures are more complex. In fact, the other classes that we built the same model on are also more complex. But look, if our only problem was to predict when the fan is blocked, well, we look at this and an engineer can say, heck, I don't need machine learning anymore. Problem is now solved. I can do this with a filter, an FFT, and an if-then statement. No need for further machine learning. As I said, in many cases, the signatures are more complex, and in many cases, we'll use more complex feature spaces than spectral magnitude. They may involve time frequency patterns. They may involve periodicity. They may involve sparse types of features. So the computations can get very involved. Okay, but we now have the information we need to convince the guys in engineering, the guys in operations, and the bosses that not only does it work statistically, but we understand why it works. Okay, so phase 1, POC, done. Is it possible? Definitely. Can I explain it to everybody who needs to understand it? Absolutely. It's worth proceeding. We get our budget, on to phase 2. Okay, now, in phase 2, we need to design the product. And here, the questions are really mostly about the hardware. It's not so much a machine learning problem anymore. Now it's a question of how many sensors do we really need? Where are we going to put them? And can we manufacture it at a reasonable cost? If we're going to go out to our supply chain and acquire those components, what are the minimum specs we need? And so on. So we're going to now try and use machine learning to inform our answers to those questions. Our approach will be to take multiple units now, definitely not just one, and we're going to put them in a lab environment where we wire them up with a bunch of different sensors in a bunch of locations with really lab-grade stuff, high precision, high sample rate, and we're going to put the thing through a bunch of different environmental conditions as well as fault conditions, because temperature, humidity, that could change how this thing vibrates, and we want to make sure that it will work in all conditions. Okay. So we put it in the lab, we wire it up. We've put an accelerometer on the motor because we think that's the most likely place it's going to work. But you know what? If we could put it on the chassis, well, that's cheaper to manufacture. So let's try that out. And the intake grill is another good place that's relatively easy to manufacture if we get good results there too. The boys in engineering are skeptical of this whole accelerometer-based thing. They think it can be done using thermocouples. So we're going to put a few thermocouples on there to satisfy them, and we're going to see, they want to know that this is actually better than using the way they would have thought of to do it. Okay, so we put all of this stuff in the lab, we wire it up, we collect a bunch of data, and we want to ask the question, what is the best possible combination of data channels at the lowest cost that will let us accomplish our detection accurately? Okay, for that we're going to use the BOM optimization. BOM stands for Bill of Materials, module in Reality AI tools. Okay, so we take that data set of all of that data collected in the lab from all of those channels, we plug it in, and we tell a Reality AI BOM optimization to go and run a sensor channel optimization. Okay, and here is the output we get. Okay, this is a complicated screen. There's a lot going on. Let me explain what you're seeing. This first block is showing us predicted accuracy for actually, experience accuracy for each of these sensor blocks, because we have this we have this data, right, for each one of these particular combinations. So the motor mounted accelerometer X, Y, and Z, and by the way, this accelerometer puts out the magnitude of the vibration as a fourth channel. The one mounted on the case, the one mounted on the intake, and then those thermocouples. And very clearly in this first top thing here, we can see that, hey, that motor mounted accelerometer is the clear winner. It beats out the case by enough to make us want to go ahead and do that motor mounting, even though it's going to be a little bit more of a pain to manufacture. The thermocouples, we can conclusively dismiss that now. Their performance is nowhere near as good as with the accelerometer. Okay. Now, the bottom half of the screen, what is this telling us? In the bottom half of the screen, we've asked the algorithm to show us what is the best combination of sensor channels, regardless of what group they belong to. The top line, we get the best accuracy overall when we combine the 4-channel motor-mounted accelerometer with the 4-channel case-mounted accelerometer. It's slightly better than the motor-mounted by itself. Okay, is that 0.2% accuracy boost enough to put a second accelerometer on there? Probably not. Okay, so that's interesting. But then look at this third one down here: motor accelerometer magnitude only. It's getting almost the same level of accuracy as using those 2 sensors and all of their channels together. What this tells us is for that accelerometer we're going to put on the motor, we don't even need a 3-axis. We can do this with a single-axis accelerometer. So we can find a quicker, we can find perhaps a cheaper component to put on there. Okay, awesome. We know we are moving forward now on the product with a motor-mounted accelerometer. So what are the specifications we need for that accelerometer? What do we tell the guys in procurement they should be looking for? Okay, so now what we do is we run a set of analyses in Reality AI tools that looks at how the performance of the models are expected to degrade with respect to sample rate, bit depth, and the like. Okay, so this is a sample rate sensitivity analysis of a model built using Reality AI Explore. And we take what we know about the mathematics of the underlying feature set and the mathematics of the model itself. We make predictions for different points on the curve, then we run some tests and we can estimate the shape of the curve. And what we get to is a prediction that we can probably sample this thing maybe even as low as 400 hertz. 400 to 600 hertz is where it starts to degrade. And turns out 400 hertz is the maximum of a much cheaper component. So you know what? This looks pretty good. We want to move forward with that 400 hertz accelerometer. But what about dynamic range? We know that as we reduce sample rate and bit depth, well, we lose dynamic range, and that means the ability to reject noise. So if we were to do it at 400 hertz, what would be the performance with respect to noise? Okay, so we take a model now built on that with a 400 hertz sample rate, and we look at the performance with respect to noise. Now, this is an SNR ratio across the bottom. So at 0, the signal and the noise are exactly the same strength. Positive means the signal is stronger than the noise. Negative means the noise is stronger than the signal. And with SNR measured in dB, it doubles every 3. So at 6 dB, what that's telling us is that the signal is about 4 times stronger than the noise, and that's about where it starts to degrade. Okay, but this is an accelerometer mounted on a piece of vibrating machinery. The most of the motion is going to be from that signal, from the machine itself shaking. If this was a microphone out in the open getting all kinds of background as well, I'd be worried about this signal to noise performance. But for something, an accelerometer flush mounted on a piece of rotating, vibrating equipment, it's not bad. We want to know that it doesn't degrade very, very low below 12, because then we'd be worried about the internal noise of the accelerometer. But we look at this and say, you know what? It looks like we're going to have sufficient dynamic range. We're not concerned about internal noise at all. Procurement guys, go ahead, look for a 400 hertz accelerometer that can capture bit depth of 16 and just make sure that it won't melt when we attach it to the motor, and we're good to go. Okay. Remember those thermocouples? The other thing we can check is measurement tolerance, and we did this with the thermocouples even though we rejected them. But the other thing we can check is the precision of the measurement. So as we degrade the quality of the components and we allow tolerance, how do those errors stack and affect the performance of the model itself? So if we were going to use thermocouples, a 1 to 2% measurement error is acceptable. Okay. All right, so at the end of this now, can we build it? Yes, we can. Is the cost within limits, and do we know where we can procure the parts? Yes, we do. Is it going to work? We have a lot of confidence. We show this to the bosses, they approve. Time to get manufacturing involved. We're going to start building prototypes. We're going to get them in the field. We're going to create a production version of our machine learning model and actually get this thing implemented. Okay, so for phase 3, our objective now is a degree of statistical certainty. We need full diversity of implementations, all kinds of different units. We're going to need a lot of data, and I mean a lot. Okay, now, data collection takes time, costs money, and the best way to control the time and the money is to make sure you only do it once. If something goes wrong, and something always goes wrong, you want to be able to catch it as quickly as you can while you can still correct it without having to go back and redo the expensive stuff. So to do that, we have tools in Reality AI around data readiness. And I know I'm starting to get short of time. I want to leave time for the Q&A, so I'm going to go through this very quickly. But in Reality AI, every time you add data to the data set that the machine is looking at, we automatically scan those files. We will compute statistics about the file consistency. Do these files contain the number of data columns you expect? Are they in the sample rates you expect? Does the size histogram make sense? That type of thing. And boy, I can tell you, we find all kinds of garbage in these data files sometimes, particularly when collecting at scale. You'd be surprised, or maybe you wouldn't. The second thing we do is we try to open every single file and read it. Now, if there is a problem that prevents us from actually reading the file, we'll flag it as corrupt. If there is something inside that file that makes us say, hey, you know what, something may not be right. If a value stays static for too long, that doesn't really happen in the natural world very often. It might be okay, but maybe you want to look at it. And then finally, files that are just plain empty. It's got a header, it's got no data. Again, something that happens all the time in real world data sets. But you want to catch these as quick as you can. As soon as they're added to the data store in Reality AI, we run these checks, flag them, alert you to them, so that you can see if there's a problem either with your instrumentation or with your processing chain before too much damage is done. Okay. The last thing we do in this data readiness section is we accumulate statistics about coverage so that you can see where you are with respect to your data collection plan. Do I have enough of the different levels of humidity, temperature, target classes, the specific model we're going to look at, that is model of the product, not machine learning model. All of the class data and metadata variables that help you gauge coverage, we'll continuously accumulate those statistics and also accumulate information about for how long those classes persist in the underlying data. This is very important if your machinery takes some time to stabilize after a condition transition before the results are reliable, for example, or if you're still experimenting with the size of the detection window you're going to use in the data. This type of time coverage histogram can be very, very important. Okay, so the last thing is we export the tool. I'm not going to spend much time on this, but once we have a fully trained model and it's ready to go, basically you pick that model, pick the target you're going to deploy it for, add the include files for the appropriate manufacturer, and you're good to go to pull it into your IDE and call this model with a single line of code. And again, I don't have time to go into that. If you would like to hear more, give me a shout. Okay, so we have now completed a full product development lifecycle in 25 minutes. We proved the feasibility, we designed the hardware, we completed the development, we're ready to go. Time to hand off to manufacturing. Okay, thank you. So if you are really interested in Reality AI, let us know. We're running a special for our tinyML Talks friends. And with that, it's Q&A time.
All right, thank you so much, Stuart. That was a fantastic presentation. Let's open up the Q&A. So our first question here, and please also remember, if you jump into Q&A, you can upvote questions that you're particularly interested in. So our first Q&A question here is, which Cortex M4 or M7 boards support Reality AI, or which has it been tested on?
Yeah, so we've been used on a variety of boards. I'd have to pull up the list, but we're manufacturer agnostic. Basically, the way our stuff works is we will compile for specific IDE. You pull in the include files that support your particular manufacturer. It's a pretty general approach. Basically, anything supporting the common tool chains we're compatible with.
Fantastic, thank you. From Manuel, how long would this case study take that you've just outlined in real life? Would that be weeks or months?
Excellent question, excellent question. So it really does depend on the specifics of the case study. I'd say weeks to months is the right time frame to be thinking. I will tell you that the analysis and the Reality AI part is by far the quickest. The thing that takes the longest is the data collection itself. So, you know, using an automation tool like Reality AI that takes all of that complex modeling and just runs it means that, you know, the analysis is always running ahead of the collection and can actually be run multiple times iteratively during the collection, perhaps even shaping the direction of the data collection to make it more efficient.
Okay, fantastic, thank you. So question from Mehul. Does Reality AI work with computer vision applications, including evaluating camera and vision data sets?
Thank you for asking that. We do not support computer vision. We are all about signal data. So, you know, we're built on the fundamental mathematics of signal processing. If it looks like a waveform, we'd be a very good solution. There are other really good solutions for vision, for voice recognition, and that type of thing. Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, question from Darshan. Hi, Michael. If I compile the C and C++ scripts with GCC or other compilers, then is it possible to execute these binaries in Renode? By the way, what should be done in order to get the output of the code in the UART?
So I think this might be a question for the previous speaker.
Yes.
Oh, sorry, yeah. Sorry, I thought it was a cool kind of crossover question between both. But I guess that was just in here from the previous slide. Yeah. Oh, no, actually it was asked at 8:56. So yeah, crossover question, if you both want to jump in.
I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, I can try to answer. So the question was, basically, if you compile the binary, you can execute it in Renode. It should run, assuming that it doesn't really use anything that we don't support. To get output of the code on UART, you have to use some kind of a print function, like output to the UART from your code, and then just the UART has to be in your platform definition file, which if you use one of the ones we provide, it's going to be there. And then you have to remember to open the UART. There's a command called show analyzer that you run on a UART, and then like a window will pop up in the interactive environment that will show you the output of the UART. But most of the demos that we support actually use UART for communication with the user. So just take a look at like almost any demo script included within Renode. You should be able to kind of copy that behavior in your own application. Just exchange your binary, of course. Exchange the binary to your binary.
Okay, and to make this a crossover question, Stuart, would it be possible to run the Reality AI outputs in an environment like Renode?
I don't see why not. We haven't actually tested it, but Michael, we should discuss that after this call.
That's what I thought as well, yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, and so last question that we have time for is a really good one, actually. Can I run multiple Reality AI inferences in parallel?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And in fact, if you go to our website, you'll see a demonstration. In fact, a demonstration using the data that we just built these slides on, that simultaneously runs 3 models. One that is a classification model for predicting the specific state of the blower. One that is an anomaly detection model, so a one-sided classifier, is it normal or isn't it? And then a third regression model predicting the remaining useful life of the filter on that thing. And all 3 are running simultaneously in real time. And in that video, it's on an M7 because our hardware partner wanted to showcase their M7 chip, but it certainly could have run on an M4 and run all 3 of those at the same time. We used maybe 12% of the capacity of that M7.
All right, fantastic. So thank you so much, Stuart. It's been a great presentation, and thank you again, Michael. Okay, so thanks again to our tinyML talk sponsors. So we have DeepLight, Kickshow, Edge Impulse, Reality AI, Maxim Integrated, and SynSense. So huge thanks. If you're interested in sponsoring tinyML talks, please contact Betty at tinyml.org. So here are some messages from our sponsors. So at DeepLight use AI to make other AI faster, smaller, and more power efficient. At Edge Impulse, which is where I work and I'm the lead tinyML engineer, we've got a platform that lets all developers build tinyML models across multiple sensor types. So come check us out at edgeimpulse.com. Maxim Integrated enable edge intelligence across different sensors, different cores, and different types of AI. Kickshow AutoML for embedded AI provides an automated machine learning platform that builds tinyML solutions for the edge using sensor data. And Reality AI, which we've just seen from Stuart, is a tinyML for engineers tool for building products using tinyML. And finally, SynSense builds ultra-low power sensing and inference hardware for embedded mobile and edge devices. So our next talks coming up from Rajan and Chandrasekhar are on Tuesday, October the 13th. So please tune in. It'll be same start time. And you can also contact talks at tinyml.org if you're interested in presenting at a future tinyML talk session. So thank you so much for tuning in again today. And thank you so much to both of our speakers. And I'm looking forward to seeing you next time. Goodbye.